Alright, this is page 125 of Excel Module 5. I've opened up 5-4. It asks us to go ahead and save it as ACE. So I'm going to do a save as. So that's step A. Step B, we're moving down. Name the range B7 to B13 invoice date and set the scope to the accounts payable worksheet. And we are on the accounts payable worksheet. So let's see here. B7 to B13. I'm going to highlight. I'm going to come up here into formulas and I want to define name. Right up, switch the formulas toolbar, define name. And then I'm putting invoice date. Don't forget to include the underscore. And I have to change the scope here to be accounts payable. If you don't change the scope thing, it causes problems. And I'm going to select OK. Moving to letter C, select B4. So I'm up here in B4 and I'm going to give the name current date. So again, I'm on the formulas tab, define name, current date, make sure to have an underscore again, and change the scope so it's on accounts payable. Letter D, enter a formula using the named range invoice date in cell E7 that calculates the invoice due date by adding 30 to the invoice due date. So in E7, it's 30 days after the invoice date is when it's due. So we're going to just do an equals sign, invoice due date, which is B7. Then I'm going to go ahead and just add plus 30, and it gives us a due date. Let me see. Copy the formula in E7 to, so we're dragging this down. So we should have a due date entered for each of these. If it is the same, you've done something wrong. It should be recalculating for each cell. That moves me to letter F. In F7, enter a formula using the named invoice date and named current date that calculates the age by subtracting. So we're going to come up here, still in formulas tab, and I'm going to say use in formula because then it grabs those names you already made. And I'm going to take the current date, you should see it in that list now that you made, and I'm going to just do minus. Then I'm going to use in the formula again, invoice date. And you should see them color code up here. It looks so the blue and the red lights up for me. I'm going to hit enter and then drag down, and we should say how old the invoice is. Invoice is another word for bill. And then I went ahead and filled it down, F8 to F13, using the fill handle. Moving to letter H. In cell G7, enter an if function that calculates the number of days an invoice is overdue, assuming that it must be paid in 30 days. So your logical test should see if the age of invoice is greater than 30. And if it's true, it should calculate the current date minus invoice due date, and false should be 0, and then copy it down. So this gets a little more complex. Okay, so we're using the if function, so I'm going to come up to logical, and I'm going to select if. Again, I'm still in the formulas toolbar. So we need to test to see if the age of the invoice is more than 30. So I'm going to just click, I'm in the logical test box, and I'm just going to click in our age of invoice column. Then I'm going to do the greater than sign, which is down towards the bottom of your keyboard. Then I'm going to just put 30. So is the bill over 30 days? If that is true, then we need to calculate the time. So you're going to calculate the current date. So I'm going to come over here. And since we don't have, we could do the using formula and do current date. And then you can do minus and do invoice date. Value of false is 0. And hit OK. And then drag it down. So again, I worked from this menu. So my number of days overdue is age of invoice, F7, greater than 30. And then I just went up to my name manager, using formula, current date minus invoice date, and then value of false 0. And then I just filled it down. Next, letter I. In cell H7, enter an AND function to prioritize the overdue invoices that are more than $1,000. The logical 1 should check to see if the number of days overdue is more than 0, and logical 2 should check if the amount's over 1,000. And then copy to the rest of the cells. All right. So we're going to go over here to AND. I'm on the logical function is AND. So the first one it tells me is check to see if the number of days overdue is more than 0. So I'm going to click in my days overdue. So I'm in, looks like G7. If that's greater than 0, the bill is overdue. In logical 2, so I'm going to come down to the second option. Check to see if the bill is more than 1,000. So we click in, go to the amount. So I'm in D7, and this is greater than 1,000. So in other words, anybody's bill that's late, that's over $1,000, those are the people we want to track down right away. And then we should select OK, and we should get a true statement. And then we can look at it to test. So the test would be, is it overdue? Yes. Is it over 1,000? Yes. So we know it calculated right. And then we can fill down. Like this one is accurate, it is overdue, but it's under 1,000, so we know it is calculating correctly. Then it wants us to highlight H7 through H13 and select Name Manager. And we're going to select New, and this is just going to be called Priority. And then switch it to Accounts Payable. Mine automatically grabbed the priority word. Did yours? Yeah. Okay, so it'll probably recognize the title. So I'm going to hit OK and close. And then go ahead and get a save in. And that is the Independent Challenge 1.